Good morning. And this is Rhoda from Love, Forgive, Live podcast. We are on because I have a very special guest, Dr. James W. Smith. He's not just a doctor, he's also a clergyman and a pastor, and also an author. He has an incredible story to share with you. I read his bio, I got chills and cried and laughed. Then I was like, this is a great testimony that needs to be shared with the world. And I can't think of it enough. Just speaking about him right now, I'm still getting chills, bumps all over myself. It's a powerful thing to recognize the impact of God on your life. And that is not an easy feat. It comes through a lot of trial, a lot of stress, but also battles that have been won. Battles that one would think is not thinkable for you to win that battle. He went to the battle without even knowing how it's going to turn around. But when he turned his life to the one who knows what to do with it, look out, something amazing happened. Dr. Smith, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. It's good to be with you.
Your story is, to use the word powerful, is not even enough. I think there aren't words to sum it up, to speak of it. But in our limited capacity to speak in the human language, but I know beyond this, it means more. I would like you to share your story. I think you would say it better than I could. And I love the word on your t-shirt, encouraging. Please welcome. And thank you for gracing us with your presence. And I'd like you to explain it in your own words.
Well, I was just a country lawyer who robbed a bank, and I received a 15-year sentence, which I served 5 years in the Federal Correctional Institution.
So let me get this straight. Sorry to cut in. I heard, and I'm like, wait a minute now. I can't just glaze over that.
Mm-hmm.
I was just a country lawyer. Those are your words.
Mm-hmm.
That decided to rob a bank.
Mm-hmm.
Please take me through this true juxtaposition path.
Okay, I don't mind doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I began practicing law in 1971.
Wow.
I was the first African American lawyer to practice law in my hometown,
Yes.
and of course, I was the uh, youngest African American lawyer at the time to
Mm-hmm.
practice law in the state of North Carolina. I was 26 years of age.
Wow.
During that time, I uh, began to gamble some with other uh, lawyers
Mm-hmm.
who was much older than I, bondsmen, barbers, and we had a little circle. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, in our circle, we would go every weekend to
Mm-hmm.
one town, next weekend another town,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we did. It was fun. I mean, lots of fun.
Mm-hmm.
The guests provided meals, drinks, and everybody
Mm-hmm.
just had lots of fun.
Mm-hmm.
and I won money. I lost money,
Mm-hmm.
but it was okay. We loaned each other money because everybody knew each other,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew how to. Old saying say, I knew when to hold and I knew when to fold. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
playing poker was the game that we played.
Yes.
But at one point, after a while, I became to the point where I didn't know when to get up. The love of the game
Mm.
became overpowering. And of course, I began to go down financially. Financially, uh, lost my wife of 5 years, my home, properties that I had acquired, and of course, I did something very stupid. Uh, I got up one morning
Mm-hmm.
and looked at my drawer, dresser drawer, picked up my 22 caliber pistol, went to the office, and contemplated taking my life. Uh, I didn't do that. I think it was my mom was a lot in the front of my mind, and I'm the only child to a single mom, and
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't do that. So I got up,
Thank God.
locked the door to my office, and began going down 85. Still had those thoughts of suicide
Mm-hmm.
because I thought about stopping right in front of a big transfer truck and let it hit me right in the back.
Oh
Um,
my.
but there was something still overpowered me in terms of my mom. How was she going to take this? You know,
Mm-hmm.
here's a lawyer who tried to take his life, and a whole lot
Mm-hmm.
of other things going on. So I went on into a little place called Oxford, sat
Mm-hmm.
down and ate. It was probably about 10 o'clock then.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked out of the window, and here was the CCB Bank. And it was Carolina Central Bank at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mind just started roaming. Gee, if I could just get my hands on 50, $100,000, I could pay all my debts off, and
Mm-hmm.
I could go back into my office, sit down, and start practicing, and like nothing had happened. It was just crazy
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, and
Yes.
and so that's it kept roving in my mind, and so I just uh, got up, started riding around a little bit in that town, and then it wouldn't leave me, so I just pulled
Wow.
right up to the bank door and said, "To the heck with it, get caught or not." Went in, robbed the bank,
Mm-hmm.
and took off. That's how that happened. It was a
Mm-hmm.
long story. Afterward, I was got stopped twice by officers who just didn't believe it was me, so they let me go, and
Mm-hmm.
then finally they realized that it was me, and
Mm-hmm.
of course I was charged, uh, put on a $100,000 bond,
Mm-hmm.
and of course at that time, because of what happened and who I was, they obviously thought that I had a mental breakdown, so they uh,
Mm-hmm.
ordered me to the mental hospital for 6 weeks of observation. I stayed fifth, for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I called my lawyer and said, look, I thought through this. I'm okay. I want to get all this over behind me. And it was in the mental hospital when I really began to reflect on my life, how
Mm-hmm.
I got here. And I just made a change right there in the mental hospital. I said, this is it. All the other stuff I was doing is over. I'm finished with it. Bye. And I'm ready to plead guilty to this, get it behind me, and start my life over again. That was
Mm-hmm.
that was a transformation.
And with that transformation, take us through the process. In that moment, you're in this institution. Every autonomy that you could have has been taken, stripped off. Everything that you held dear was gone, except for the thought of the love of your mother. How did your mind, or did you even transition from that darkness to the space of deciding this is not for me?
Well, I have to admit that my mom is a committed Christian. She was. She's deceased now. But she was a committed Christian, and I was a Christian. I'd gone to church. My mom brought me up in church and what have
Mhm,
you. Uh, didn't go like I would have gone when I was very young. You know, you're
mhm,
grown and you make your own
mhm,
decisions.
mhm.
But when I was in the mental hospital, this was the moment that my faith kicked in. You know,
Ooh, say
it,
that again.
it was a moment
Ooh,
that my faith kicked in, and I just knew that with my faith and trusting that I could get beyond this.
yes,
And I knew that it was part of it was gambling, part of it was my uh, uh, what I wrote in my second book was my I think I had a fear of failure. I didn't want to fail because of I was this first African American lawyer in my hometown, so all that was kicking in, and
yes,
I came to the conclusion that's what happened to me, and I didn't know how to deal with it. But now
yes,
I'm reflecting on that, and my faith kicks in, and I say, all of this that caused me to do what I did, I'm finished with it. So I quit gambling, no more poker, all the little other little stuff was doing, womanizing, and you name it, was over. And all I wanted to do was to get the sentence over with. I knew I was going to get some time. I didn't know how much, but whatever it was, I was ready to do it, get
mhm,
it behind me, and come
mhm.
out and start my life over again. That's what I did, with
Wow.
no question about it.
So let me hear this straight and explain this. You're in this space and you're reflecting on what has happened in your life up until then. You started literally going through a list of things that got you here and
Mhm.
say this, that, this, that. Oh, wow, I see the picture now. And when you saw the picture, instinctively, you made a choice that in in mental health, we have things like counseling, detox, gambling counseling, AA. We have all that. We have things like this is just a fraction of the stuff I'm mentioning. You didn't choose to go to that route and say, oh, let me try and get into some counseling and get all this stuff done. That instinctive decision that said, I'm done with it. And literally, you felt that within you.
That's right. I did. No question about it. And I have to admit that at first I thought it was my gambling. I thought I had become a compulsive gambler.
Mm-hmm.
But after my sentence was over and everything, I pulled my life back together. I called gambling uh, an anonymous place in Chapel
Mm-hmm.
Hill
Mm-hmm.
that had some guys and I guess females both were there, and
Yes.
I asked to come over and talk with the 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 uh, the guys because
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I could say something to help them, encourage them along the way. And the director of it asked me if I was still a compulsive gambler. I said no. I have not gambled since '81. And he said, You're not?" He said, "I don't even think the guys would be interested in hearing from you then, because
because they'll be confused.
because we believe that once a problem or compulsive gambler, always a problem and compulsive
That's
gambler,
right.
same as AAA.
Yes.
That was a concept.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I wrote my second book and began to do a self evaluation of my
Yes.
life. And I came to the conclusion that maybe it wasn't the gambling that caused me to do what I did, but
Mm-hmm.
more it was my fear of to fail. I didn't want to
That's right.
fail. I had been this. I hate to boast like this, but I had a reputation of being a very good lawyer. You know,
Yes.
I was aggressive, and
Mhm.
I didn't want to go down. I didn't want to fail, and I
Yes.
think that had more to do with it than anything else.
Yes. And the pressure,
Hmm.
the community,
Yes.
and constantly saying, but you're the first, you're the first.
Hmm.
People don't understand the amount of pressure it takes and the the burden on a person when all that rhetoric is being directed at you. Oh, you're the first. You set the standards now. Now you gotta do this now. It's a lot, especially on a young person who is still getting to know himself. I
I
remember
agree.
for me at 26, I didn't even know what I like about me or what I didn't like about me, let alone to become a lawyer, have a law firm, and practice it and being good at it. That's a lot of pressure. And it's no doubt that it was that level of pressure and wanting to stay on top and not fail at anything because any kind of failure, as little as it may be, others may see, oh, it's nothing. You just, roll over and try something new. They don't understand the mental capacity it takes. Take us through that pressure of the constant hearing. And then you're hearing that. And then on the other side, about what you were thinking about yourself. Because a lot of the time when people are hearing people say, oh, you're great, you're great, you're great, you're great, and you're doing things to show that, but then your internal dialogue is completely different.
Hmm.
What was the internal dialogue for you?
Well, it was interesting because when I was in the mental hospital, I just had, I mean, days, not just uh, uh, hours, but I had each day to reflect.
Mm,
It's not like you got some other things you got to do. You don't have anything to do. you, know, you have absolutely nothing to do. You
mm-hmm.
all you've been all that's being done to you is being watched by other folk
Yes,
and the gods, and that
yes,
was it. So all you can do is think, reflect,
yes,
and try to just think back over your whole life. My whole life flashed between in front of
yes,
me. It wasn't just a moment. I saw every possible thing that I had ever done.
mm-hmm.
My undergraduate, my
Mm-hmm.
high school, everything, and I had to move through that. I had to say, "Oh, gee, this is where I was headed. This is what I was going to be doing, and look
Yes,
at me now. How did this happen?" And so
mm-hmm.
I had to get beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep saying the only way I got beyond it was my faith. It just kicked in,
That's right.
and I knew that if I trusted and believed in myself, I could overcome this. And that's what I did.
So powerful. As you were saying this, I kept hearing this verse: be still and know that I am God.
Mhm.
Be still. And it's strange, from a young age, you were running so fast. You couldn't stay still.
Mm-hmm.
And when this incident happened and you became still, and that stillness, that complete stillness brought you to, let me see, was I present from all the things I moved through?
Mm-hmm.
Now you became fully present, because we cannot become present until we become still.
That's right.
And when we become still, we begin to see.
Yep, that's it. No other way you can really explain it. And so even when I was confined,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in the federal correction institution
Mm-hmm.
in Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was going to be okay. I did 5 years with
Mm-hmm.
no infractions. Matter of
Yes.
fact, I think if you could contact the system right now and see my record, I was perhaps the only individual in that system
Mm-hmm.
that ever got a chance to go out from the system by myself to go to a prison fellowship seminar twice.
What?
One time,
Wow.
I one time I flew out by myself
Mm-hmm.
on the plane and came back into the system. The the
Wow.
the warden and the chaplain
Mm-hmm.
could not even tell inmates anything about where I was gone.
Of course, you'll be in trouble with them.
That's right. And when I came back, it was always I had to go back to court for something. That was
Yes.
the only reason I wasn't in. But I was the only person to do that. Once I went to Stallstown, Pennsylvania,
What a
for
man.
a 2 weeks training, and I went to D.C. for another week's training,
Wow.
twice out of the 5 years. And that's how I became a I forget what you might call it now, but I was a trainer, a teacher for
Wow.
fellowship, for prison fellowship international. I taught classes to inmates all over, even on death row here in North Carolina. I've been
Mm-hmm.
as far as Kansas,
Mm-hmm.
to 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 teach inmates. I was doing it all over for a long time, and I just probably stopped doing it within the last, I think, maybe just before COVID came in, or right when COVID came in. Yeah,
Wow.
as I used to go out on a regular
Mm-hmm.
basis,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so that's part of what I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I got out, I also just to kind of tell you where I am now. When I got out, I went back to seminary. I
Mm-hmm.
received my Master's of Divinity degree. I continue.
Whoa.
I continue. I got my Doctorate of Ministry. I
Mm-hmm.
was called to pastor in 1970. I'm sorry, in 1991, and I stayed at that church of a membership of
Mm-hmm.
about close to 200, 100 and something active members.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed at that church for 32 years.
Woo!
I just I just
Amazing.
I just retired uh, at the end of 22,
Mm-hmm.
and I stayed retired for 6 months. And and
Uh,
my home church pastor died abruptly.
oh no, I'm
And
sorry.
yeah, he preached on that Sunday and died on that Monday with a heart attack.
Mm.
They called me 2 weeks afterwards, and I've been interim pastor at my home church for the last 1 year.
How
August was one
amazing.
year. So
How
that's
amazing.
yeah. One more story, then I'm gonna let you go. I
No,
had
please, I want to hear them.
one more story. after I was working, somewhat part time
Mm-hmm.
with a law firm,
Mm-hmm.
and because of what I had gone through, I had some friends who told me, say, I think you would be good uh, becoming a sponsor of CLE and talking about your situation with other lawyers, so that would help them. There was only one other lawyer who had been charged and convicted of a felony that was doing it. He was a white lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
and his charge was embezzlement.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, "Well, I don't know about that. Mine is a violent crime." He said, "Well, why don't you try it?"
Mm-hmm.
So I came back, talked to my wife, my present wife now of
Mm-hmm.
34 years, and she said to me,
Congratulations.
she
Good
said,
job.
well, honey, you don't have your license anyway. She said, oh, well, they can't do anything but tell you no. So I applied. I applied, and they told me, asked me when I called. Well, first of all, I called over. They asked me, had I talked with Jim Blackburn, that was his name, who was the other lawyer
Mm-hmm.
who was doing it, and I
Mm-hmm.
talked with him. And so ended up applying. They told me that it'll take about 2 weeks, and I should hear something from them.
Yes.
At the end of 2 weeks, I had not heard a thing from
Mm-hmm.
them. And so in my mind, all I could see was the bar, the continuing legal education component of the bar,
Mm-hmm.
seeing African American man
Mm-hmm.
who had robbed a bank,
Mm-hmm.
and that was not a good picture. It was just not. So
So you
you know
thought.
what? It was not right. So I said, so you know what I did? I got dressed, put on my three-piece suit. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was looking good, and I
Mm-hmm.
went over to the North Carolina State Bar,
Mm-hmm.
and I said I'd like to speak with somebody in the continuing legal education area.
Mm-hmm.
They called up. A lady came down, a white lady came down,
Mm-hmm.
and when she looked at me, I knew right then that she was impressed with me. And she came over and she said, Mr. Smith, she said, we have your information. I promise you, you'll hear something from us within the next 5 days. The
Yes.
next 5 days, I got a letter telling me I have been approved as a sponsor of continuing legal education for the North Carolina State Bar. I did that for
Oh,
11, I did that for 11 years.
ooh, amazing. I am in awe of this transformation and taking what you thought was a mistake, what you believe was a mistake, but that was part of the processing to bring you into place and into a space to those who needed you and still need you. And here in the beginning, when you went through it, what have I done? How could I have been this way? And then you had those thoughts in the hospital, in this institution, and then gave your life and said, I am done with it. Without even knowing how this is going to turn, look what God did with this. This is a testimony.
That's it. That's true.
To those who are listening, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know how badly you think you've messed up. And as human beings, we mess up, and we mess up sometimes, it's a big one. And it's so messy that sometimes we start to think, there is no way this mess could ever be cleaned up. There's no way this mess could ever turn around or be useful. A lot of time when I talk to clients with work and they feel so bad about something they've done, And sometimes I just say it's the encouraging thing. Maybe let's look at it another way. And to know that you didn't go to any counseling to to start looking at, in the simplest way I could put it. When things are happening, when you start looking at the situation in a different way, it literally shifted to look like a whole different thing. Learning this about yourself and recognizing how pivotal your decision was at that moment, and that true conviction from within, without a doubt. And when you started going to the prisons and speaking to others, did you recognize how all the stuff you went through brought you to exactly where you were supposed to be?
Yes, I did. Because I think sometimes we don't take the time to reflect.
That's right.
We don't take the time to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
when I'm talking with, or when I was talking with inmates, and not
Mm-hmm.
just that, I share my story with my church families and whoever I'm talking with, because I think my story can help others. So I don't have a
Yes.
problem with doing it.
Yes.
So it's in those moments that you also reflect. You can see in them where you were, and you
Mm-hmm.
try to help them to see where you are so they can
Mm-hmm.
get to where you are rather than staying
Yes.
in that position. So yes, I see that all the time.
Yes. And it's very powerful. Tell me what your mind goes through when a young person that everybody believes, oh, that's no, that kid is unreachable. You can't reach this kid. Nah. And then you believe within you nothing is impossible. And when you speak to that child or the young man and the light bulb comes in on, what does that do to you and what thoughts does that bring to you?
You feel really good. You feel like you've truly been a positive impact, and it's
Mhm.
really what you want to do.
Yes.
You want to always feel as if you are impacting someone's life. And when somebody come to you and
Mhm.
say, "Wow, you've helped me," I, just to hear what you did and how you have overcome has really meant so much to me.
Mhm.
I was going through this or that, and just to hear what you had to say helped get me through it. Those
Yes.
are that helps, you know. And I get it from sharing my story. I get it from my messages that I preach. So
Mhm.
I get it in so many different areas, and
Mhm.
it's impactful, and I'm glad for it. And I just try to keep doing it. Even with my podcast that I've been doing now for over a year, about a year and a half.
Mhm.
Uh, I talk about encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. So I'm doing the same thing, talking to individuals, somewhat, somewhat kind of like what you're doing with me. I'm trying to share their stories and
Yes.
help other people to see. And I always ask them, is if somebody's going through this or that,
Mhm.
what would you say to them that would be encouraging, inspiring,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
transforming? So that's what we're
Mhm.
all about. And
Yes.
even with you, I see the same thing coming, and it's really great.
I praise God for that and thank you. One thing for sure, when I started the podcast, it was because people were. It was during COVID,
Hmm.
And I had a young lady called me, a former client, and she was crying. And she said, Miss Rhoda, I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't know. And I was like, what's going on? And she said, I want to see you, but since you're not working anymore, how are we going to? Because in the beginning, with mental health, they were not, because it was all face to face. You
Yeah.
couldn't do online. I mean, at least some people were probably doing online, but it wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me she saw herself at school with her friends, her groups, and everything is all stripped off. And she said, I don't know. And then another mother called me. We don't know what to do. The kids, and we are worried and we are stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? And I was like, geez. And then someone, and I was like, okay, this is becoming a lot. I'm getting these calls. And I said, okay, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
I said, I could try and just encourage,
Right.
inspire,
Mm-hmm.
and say, you can do something.
Yeah.
You
You
can
can
do something.
always you can always do something.
Yes, you can always do something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, oh, this is motivating people. Okay, I could do that. And I didn't even know what I was doing. But I said, okay, just being led one by one day at a time. And I ask it. Sometimes I would pray, meditate, and then go and take a nap. And I would just ask the question, what do you want to talk? What do you want me to talk about today? How do you want me to speak today on what? And it's strange now. I would just pick up my journal and I just started writing after asking that question without knowing. People were saying, wow, thank you. I needed that. And I was like, oh, really? Oh, okay. That is the one thing I believe when you start allowing yourself to be transformed from within, the stuff you speak of, sometimes you even surprise yourself that came out of you. And I don't know about you. People keep laughing at me. My friends, they're like, you've been doing this long enough, but every single time when things happen or you hear something from another person, you are in awe. And I said, I will always be in awe.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be in awe. They said, but it keeps happening. You should be used to it by now. And I said, transformation does not stop where you say you're used to it. Are you still being surprised? Are you still being shown this beauty of transformation every time and you're like, wow? Is that happening to you now? So tell me, when do you start now, even when you recognize, like, oh, I'm still being surprised?
I guess it's every time somebody says that I made a difference.
Mm,
You know, I'm always I maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but I am because you never know what you're saying or what you do. You
yes.
never know the impact that it's having on somebody. So
Mm,
all we are called to do is to basically share it
yes.
and to spread the word. As
Yes.
Scripture says, we don't know where it's going to fall, what kind of soil it's going to fall on. You know,
Yes.
we just share it, tell it, tell my story, share the
Mm,
word,
yes.
and just hope and pray that it falls on some good soil. And
Yes.
and our I can't, nothing I can do about it after it
Mhm.
falls on, because he says in His Word that He gives increase. So that's what I do. You know?
That's right.
And so I'm always, and so it's a pleasant surprise when somebody says, "Oh, this happened to me, uh, Dr. Smith, and and I probably would not have done this I had not talked to you." You know, that's great. I love that. You know, but I still don't want to give myself all the credit. I
That's
I
right.
tell them give I tell them give God the glory.
That's
Give Him the
right.
praise, and we move forward.
Mhm. Mhm. Very powerful. And it's one thing to not allow your ego to take the reins, but it's also another thing for you to recognize it and make the choice and say, I'm just a vessel.
Right.
Give God the glory because that honor belongs to Him.
Yes.
How do you stay grounded
Hmm.
in that?
Good questions. How do you stay grounded? By just recognizing that it's not all about you.
Mm, please say that again.
By recognizing that it's not all about you. You know,
Yes.
I didn't get to where I am because of me. I
That's
got
right.
to where I am because of Him.
That's right. That's right. And it's very powerful.
Mhm.
And I get the same thing. And people come and,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'm like, I need you to direct it to the right place.
Mm.
I wish I could take the credit, but it's not of me.
That's right. You heard it. You heard it says it's not who I am, but it's whose I am.
Yes. Because once you remember whose you are,
That's right. It's a big
there's
difference.
no stopping you.
Yeah.
And in this world where we hear a lot of egoic thoughts, egoic thinking, egoic speaking, egoic way of being, how does one start, especially when they're so well invested in this egoic thinking, then to make the transition into this space of recognizing, oh, this is what I thought. When you come across an individual like that and you're just being you, how do you continue speaking?
Hmm. Well, so I think it's you have to. Well, let me put it this way. I preached a sermon just the past Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
and it was from Acts. It was Paul sharing with the people in Athens, and it was on Mars Hill. I know you're familiar with this, and
Yes.
I talked and I shared with them about being religious but not spiritual,
Mm,
and I shared with them that you have to sometimes uh, meet people where they are.
that's
Okay, and that's what he had to do. So we meet people where they are. It's not that we try to be. We don't want to say we're part of their culture because we're
right. Mm-hmm.
not. But we have to try to understand
Mm-hmm.
why they are the way they are. And
Yes.
then once we get to that point, always recognize something within them that you can touch, touch, and get them to identify with. You know,
Yes.
that's where Paul was with this unknown God. You follow me? Well, I recognized that I saw as I was traveling through here that you have this. emblem or the shrine or the statue of an unknown God. Let me talk.
Mm,
Let me talk to you a little bit about it. You follow what I'm saying? So now I have taken what what what's they are used to seeing, but
yes.
they never really applied it to the way I'm going to talk about it. Okay, and then I want to share a little bit about them. This is what you may not know about this unknown God. And so
Yes.
when I break it down to them, then they understand. You have to approach people the same way. You know, if you want to touch them, if you want, you can't come in and just be down on them and why you're doing all of this.
Yes.
That does not work. You know,
No.
just try to understand where they're coming from, and
Hmm.
then work with them based on that premise.
Yes. And I love that because reach the person where they are. My father used to say, you can be the best teacher of any subject, but if you cannot teach that same subject to a 10-year-old
Mm,
where they can really comprehend it,
that's true. That's true.
then he said, you're not teaching. What you're
That,
doing is just talking at them.
that's so true. I do it all the time. I was sharing with my wife. I say when I do a sermon, I don't care. Sometimes whether I might. Sometimes I know that grammar is not correct, but
Hmm.
that might be the grammar that they understand. So I'm not.
Yes.
You understand? So I'm not. I'm not. I want to make certain that that it's plain and simple.
Yes.
Not this hyperluded that I can use, but I'm not interested in that because that
Yes.
doesn't move anybody.
No,
So
it doesn't.
yeah, doesn't move anybody.
It really doesn't. And this is because when sometimes if I go to a place to speak and um, I hear that, oh, yeah, these people, they're highly educated. They're that. I don't speak in a highly educated
Mm-hmm,
language or tone.
mm-hmm,
Rather, I break it down
mm-hmm,
simple. And the strangest thing is sometimes when I go and people are taking notes. And then I'm surprised they're taking notes because I'm speaking so simple.
mm-hmm.
And they take note. And then sometimes it does a number. I mean, like, oh, they're actually writing that down.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me that I am speaking in the tone that I'm supposed to speak.
Yeah.
Break it down so when they go to read this note or share that with others, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Not throwing some language that's beyond the person because what you have to share and say is valid, there's no doubt. But if the delivery is coming in from a high language standpoint, you've already lost that person. So then the language, they're stuck on that.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever, even though it could be something you're sharing that will save their lives, it will not be taken in because you created, it's almost like a barrier without even knowing that you created a barrier deliberately
Mm-hmm.
by choosing to speak in that tone. So I can relate to meeting them where they are. No judgment, no criticism, but being available to speak to what may be going on, troubling them, or thoughts. One thing I would like to know after serving and doing all this, did you ever consider that, oh, I've done my work. Okay, I'm done?
No.
That's right.
You're never done.
That's right.
Even when I retired from my pastorate,
Mhm.
I said to my minister friends, I said, I'm retiring from the pastorate,
Mhm.
but I'm not retiring from the ministry.
That's right.
That's I just don't believe I can. And
Mhm.
and frankly, now I haven't retired from the pastorate because I still my, my home church called me to as interim, so I've been there now for just a little over a year. So it's just it's always something to do. To do.
So powerful. I love this. I love this. Now, share the title of your first book. What is that?
The title of my first book is "Deal by Me: A Golden Opportunity Blown." Now, that title came from my playing poker. When you
Mm-hmm.
don't want your next hand, you say "Deal by me," and that's where that came from. The golden subtitle, "Golden Opportunity Blown," came from the fact that I lost my law practice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Mm,
that was the first book.
yes.
Uh, my second book is a second edition of the first book, "Deal by Me," second edition,
Mm-hmm.
is entitled "A Self Evaluation," and I just wrote that about maybe a year or so ago, because
Mm-hmm.
that's when I started sitting down, thinking about, reflecting on, as I told you earlier, when the guy told me that if I was still a compulsive gambler, that the guys didn't want to hear from me, and I knew that was not what it was. So that's when I came to the conclusion that I was probably afraid to fail, and
Yes.
so I named that book "Self Evaluation," second edition, uh, a self evaluation, and that's what I did. It's kind of like I I went through my life and kind of evaluated it.
Mm-hmm.
How did I get to where I was and
Mm-hmm.
where I am now, and then gave some good pointers uh, to what I think people ought to do. Uh,
Yes.
I can, some of those things that I talk about is the darkest hours just before dawn.
Yes.
I tell people to confront the source, whatever you're going with. You know, uh, if you're dealing with something, you can't uh, fix it until you confront it. Okay,
Yes.
and you know, be, always try to make certain, as my mom says, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. You
Yes.
know, and, I talk about how if you play with fire, you will get burned.
Yeah.
Okay, I talk about humility, practice humility, accept responsibility. If something consuming you, step back from it. Don't let your circumstance be an excuse. There's some good in every situation, and then I talked about the area I just shared with you. Don't be afraid to fail.
That's right.
Mhm.
I love it. I
Some of,
so
and those titles are basically in the second book, that
yes.
I wrote.
Yes. Brilliant. I love it. I think this one definitely I need to get it and
Yeah,
give it to my dad. He would
yeah.
love this.
Yeah.
And
And
um,
you can get it from my website, www.dealbyme.com, or you can get all my books from Amazon.com. Just put in the name of the book by James W. Smith, and it will come up.
James W. dealbyme.com.
Mhm.
I love this. And this is very powerful because um, I'm definitely going to make sure Dad gets this because he's in Ghana right now. So
Okay. Okay.
he's going to be very interested in hearing the story. And I'll share it because anytime I share um, an episode to him, he sends everybody has to listen to it because he loves this.
Okay.
But one thing I would say, the work you do, you're inspiring, motivating, and consulting. There is no end in sight. And I went on your page and I was looking, and I realized your momentum is powerful. When I saw young people, the young and the old, listening, taking in what you had to say, is because there is no limit. Everyone who is going through something, and believe me, everyone goes through something, is part of the experience we are having here in this earth school. So we must avail ourselves to learn, but also be open and surrender to the transformation. Because it's possible. I don't care what anybody is going through.
Mm-hmm.
It is possible to be transformed, renewed. The other day I was dreaming, and in this dream, I was shown a new skin. And I heard the word, new wine cannot be poured into old skin. It must be poured into new skin.
Mm-hmm.
So the transformation is important. You're being transformed into what God wants us to serve here.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last question before we leave. Knowing what you know now and what you've been through and the lessons you learned, if you had to give advice, wisdom, past knowledge to your younger self, what would that be?
Stay focused and stay ethical.
Ooh. Stay focused and stay ethical. Very powerful words to live by for all of your endeavors, no matter what. And it's powerful because it gives us, for lack of a better word, a plan.
Mm-hmm.
If we have no plan at all, stay focused and stay ethical. We can never be steered wrong with those two. I thank you for coming. I could sit with you and listen all day because every juncture of your stories of the transformation and what God is doing is so powerful that I know there's more. I know in my gut there's more, and I want to hear them. So let me know whenever, but I'll be checking on you and say you have something to share. I want to know because your stories are just keep coming. They keep coming.
Thank you.
And
Thank
I
you.
think I have a feeling there's going to be a third book. So the door is open, and I appreciate your patience and I appreciate your knowledge and wisdom, but above all, your humility.
Thank you. Thank you.
And this beautiful faith. I'll call it that because it is. It's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
And staying on track and walking hand in hand and saying, okay, I surrender, God. And the strangest thing is the simplest thing, I surrender, has kept a lot of my brothers and sisters and our brothers and sisters in a trap. But it takes just a simple act of saying, I surrender, Lord. Simple enough, but strangely enough, it's also the most difficult thing for a lot of people to say. I will say to people I'm working with sometimes, and I said, oh, you're wrestling a lot. How about just surrendering? They're like, whew. And I'm like, so far, what is the control doing to you?
It's true.
So I thank you.
Thank you.
Please do come back. We want you back. And how would anyone get in touch with you? Do they have to go through?
You can go to my email that you have,
Yes.
my website,
Mm-hmm.
are the best ways to contact me.
Yes, email and website. And then one thing for sure, I'm like I said, my mind is already going like, I want you back, I want you back. So to come and say anything. Thank you. God bless you for
Hey,
making the time to come in and see us and then having the patience to put up with me.
thank you.
Because
And
I was plugging my laptop upstairs and working it when I sent you the link. And then I was like, so I got up, I did my workouts and breakfast, and I was like, okay, where's my laptop? It's not in my it's not here. What is it? So I started going through, and I was like, where did I put it? So I kept searching and searching, and then the doorbell came on in my head. Ding! You left it upstairs, and I was like, oh.
I got you.
Normally I set up everything the night before,
Yeah.
so I don't go through that panic. So I had to go and get it and then plug it. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. So that's why we're a little bit delayed, but that's why I keep saying I
Okay.
appreciate your patience and thank you.
No problem.
Now, those of you who wants to um, hear more and know more, I will definitely share the information with you. And thank you for joining us on Love, Forgive, Live podcast. And my name is Rhoda. And thank you, Dr. James W. Smith, for gracing us with your presence and, above all, being humble to share your beautiful story with us and the bravery to make this reach our brothers and sisters from all walks of life. And anywhere, wherever you are, understand there's hope.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get sucked into the darkness. There's hope. And you'll be surprised once you surrender to the one who knows what to do with what you're dealing with. You'll be surprised. And it's going to be a great surprise because it's never too late. And you will find joy and peace in the surrender. But you have to go through it and make that decision on your own. My name is Rhoda as usual. Thank you for joining us on Love, Forgive, Live podcast. Those who want to send an email to me or you want to know more about Dr. James W. Smith and you want to hear more stories from him, let me know and I'll start piling them up. If you have questions or whatever, let me know and I'll send it to him. In addition to that, the email address is love, LUV, the number 4, give, GIVE, live, LIVE, at gmail.com. Contact me. I'll get you the information. And if you need to email Dr. Smith, I will get you that information and you can email him and whatever you need to ask, okay? Or send it to me and then I'll definitely make sure he gets it. I thank you for listening and being a loyal listeners, and I hope this reaches those who need it and hit in the heart the one that needs to be encouraged and inspired to make a move to be transformed from within. Thank you.